Welcome to the On Purpose Investor Podcast, show number 76. Welcome to the On Purpose Investor Podcast. My name is Eric Vogel. I'm a real estate investor, mastermind coach, husband to an amazing woman, and often my co-host, Tiffany, and father to two incredible boys. I'm on a mission to help you become a real estate investor and not only achieve seven-figure success like my wife and I did, but to do so with intention, direction, and clarity. If you want to transform your financial and personal goals, become the version of yourself you've always wanted, and reach your dream life ASAP, then you're in the right place. Thank you for deciding to hit that play button today. Now let's begin. As a successful investor, national speaker, and international best-selling author, Derek has surfed the ups and downs of the market since 2003. His expertise ranges from creative deal structuring, wholesaling, flipping, landlording, and lending and investing throughout the years. He's been involved in thousands of transactions in his career, and what sets him apart is his love for people and their success. He's passionate about teaching and mentoring people and currently runs 3 national masterminds along with a networking and advanced strategy event called Generations of Wealth Voyage, which is held on a cruise ship in the wintertime. Now let's welcome to the podcast, Mr. Derek Dombeck. So welcome to the On Purpose Investor Podcast, Derek Dombeck, a longtime friend and, mastermind coach for my wife and I when we first got started. It's an absolute pleasure to have you on our show. Welcome.
Well, thank you, Eric. Thanks for having me. You also forgot to mention that longtime singing partner around the campfire.
That's right.
We might have to tell some campfire stories.
That was a long time ago when Eric used to get into the debauchery of dancing around the campfire with a guitar. So, oh gosh. But Derek, I said a lot in your intro about what you do and who you are. I'd love for our audience to hear it from you. How did you get started in the investing space and where are you today?
Well, it's been a 20 plus year up and down ride, and started off like a lot of people start off, just bought a couple fixer-upper rentals and grew rather quickly back in the early 2000s to a point where I would say we were getting pretty comfortable and thinking about leaving the full-time job. And then 2007 hit and all of those plans were wiped away along with our portfolio. So it was a fairly tough time, which now looking back, I know was one of the largest blessings I've ever had in my life, was losing damn near everything. At that point in time, it didn't feel that way, right? Like we all just live in the moment, and we had a choice to make. And I say we, myself, my wife, Tracy, were closet investors back then. We didn't have a network of people to lean on as we went along, and we learned the hard way. But as we got through that, the blessing was we were forced to learn how to get creative, learn alternative methods of controlling and buying property. And ultimately, I met a business partner that I spent 10 years with as partners, who he had never used a bank for any investments. And we were raising private capital. We were doing creative deal structures. And to the degree where we raised enough capital, we didn't have enough deals to keep it busy. So that spawned a lending company that grew legs over a certain period of time, and actually just exited that business relationship with him on a very good note, right? We just have different visions for where we want to go with our businesses, which I think you and I will probably touch on vision a little bit, since we're both pretty passionate about it.
Yes.
So today I run Generations of Wealth, which is a platform, I believe a lot of what On Purpose Investor is, right? We want to educate people and be a resource for people to grow not only their real estate holdings and their portfolios, but also the generational wealth of knowledge and pass that on to their kids. You and I and your wife and my family and your family as well, we've spent time together at events that are designed for nothing more than just spending time together as real estate investors, little thing we call RV RIA. And we did that a couple times. And I run a conference called Generations of Wealth, and we encourage people to bring their families with them. So the point of that is our kids are building a network of their own. Number one, they don't even realize how important it is. But number two, their network is a group of other kids from around the country whose parents think the way we think. And it's really fun to watch. And you've seen it in person, the way these kids interact. It's not texting and Snapchatting each other. They're literally doing face-to-face interaction and playing games and things. So that's what we're passionate about now. It really is.
Yeah. So one thing that a lot of people don't think about when they first get started investing and building wealth is that they're going to quickly outgrow their local community, not just their physical local community, but their community of friends. And it's really hard when you do that. because you've built so many passionate relationships along the way of sharing and being vulnerable with your friends growing up or your friends in young adult life. And you have to level up in a way. And it's really difficult to do that when you don't have an outlet to find people that, like you said, think like you do and live the way you do. Most people live their life surviving. They work their job, and whatever time is left over, they try to fill it with things that are meaningful, but they often miss out because they're not really taking the time to align their off time with what truly brings them joy. And that's something that I know that lies within vision planning and vision casting. And in our program, we call it building a roadmap that is based on hyper intentionality of what truly brings you joy in life. And so when you go to events like the RV RIA or Generations of Wealth Cruise, or you join a mastermind, you're expanding that community so you can start meeting people that think like you do, that value the things that you value, and that are on this entrepreneurial journey to build wealth, not just for you, but for the next generation. I love that you are building these different outlets for people to not only build it for themselves, but then you incorporate the most important factor, and that is the next generation, because our kids are going to grow up and fill our shoes one day. And we don't want to leave them where we started. We want to leave them a foot ahead.
Yeah. And the other side of that, really where Generations of Wealth came from, was some mentors of mine and yours as well, right? They have really encouraged us to be that next generation of teachers. The likelihood of a lot of the past teachings dying off is very high. And I want to be careful how I say this. There's a lot of people in the real estate education space that are just selling education and don't necessarily do what they sell. They get into the information space, and you can get sucked in very easily into that space. They had good intentions. I have no doubt most of them had good intentions when they started, just trying to help people. But they build this machine, and now I need to sell more courses or more seminars. And now I sold more seminars. Now I got to bring on staff, which means I got to sell more product and seminars to pay my staff. And pretty soon they've got this big machine. They can lose sight of why they even got into the information and education space to begin with. Yeah. Our mentors, they never had that mindset. I mean, the minuscule amount of money they charged for their events was almost laughable, right? Like they charged enough to where people would actually pay it and show up, but it wasn't anywhere near the value of what we got from them. A lot of my friends and mentors are in their 60s and 70s, and they're very close friends of mine, but they're physically tired. And, at the end of the day, they're not going to be around forever. It takes the right mindset and the right type of person to want to pick up that torch. And, you've done it. I've done it. Other colleagues of ours have done it, but doing it in an ethical and moral way. Like even with our conference, we don't charge hardly anything for the attendance of that conference. And full disclosure, I haven't made money on my conference ever. It actually loses money every year, but that's not the point. The point is to build the network, and over time, having a network is profitable. We all should be thinking that way.
Yeah. And, that's the most common phrase in this space is your net worth is your network. So, building your network is going to give way to, not just like financial resources, or physical resources, but just the wealth of knowledge, the knowledge resource from your network. And that's what you gain by attending conferences and attending masterminds. You expand your network, and it just challenges your way of thinking. And you're right. There is this season we're in right now, probably started about 2 years ago, and it's going to go for the next 8 years. I think it's about a 10-year cycle of this new generation of teachers coming up. And it does take a special kind of person to get in there, to not get greedy and to not, want to follow the same path that a lot of our digital creators are out there doing. And that's a treacherous path that you can take, because there is so much education out there that is packaged in a way that looks super sexy and just looks like you're going to become a millionaire overnight. And that's just, it's false. And it's bad business, in my opinion. I believe that, bad money breeds bad actions with the money. And bad money comes from when you sell a product that you're not standing behind and firmly believe in, and, actively participating in what you're teaching. And there are quite a few people out there teaching things that they don't do. They found a way to make it look really good and just packaged it so well.
Absolutely. And the funny thing is, there is really very little new information other than technology. But the basics of real estate investing, doesn't change. It's just new packaging, throw some glitter on it, get a big following online or on social media, build up a hype, and throw a price tag on it.
And call it something new.
Call it something new. Yeah, change the name a little bit. I do a negotiations training, a 2-day live negotiations training, and it's not a sexy product. People don't even get excited when I say the word negotiations. And what frustrates the heck out of me is they'll go and spend $20, $30, $40, $50,000 on a wholesaling course that promises to make them $10,000 in the first week, right? Or their money back, except these leads coming in the door and they don't know how to actually talk to people, especially in this current generation where everybody is, on their phones doing this and, just they don't know how to actually have a physical conversation with somebody across the kitchen table. That should be the number one thing that you should focus on long before anything strategic, right?
Yep.
I've been in acquiring property and flipping and wholesaling and rehabbing and everything you can imagine with real estate for 20 plus years. And in every cycle of the market, including the last few years when most people claim they couldn't find a deal. And that's the thing that I try to get across to them now. The markets are shifting. This is the absolute best time to know how to get across from somebody on the kitchen table and have a conversation that leads them down a path without manipulating them, but leads them down a path to being open to terms or options and all these different alternative strategies.
Right.
So I get a little excited when people start telling me they have to do 1,000 leads or 1,000 cold calls to get one deal. And I'm like, why do you want to go through all of that? Just learn how to have a conversation, and you should be converting 1 out of 10 leads, not 1 out of 100 or 1 out of 1,000. That's my belief and my pet peeve.
Right. And, I was at a real estate meeting maybe 2 weeks ago where there's this really seasoned entrepreneur there. And, there are people in that room that send 1,000 mailers a month. There are people in the room that don't send any mailers. And both, sitting right across the table are very successful. And we asked the gentleman, you don't send mailers. How many offers do you make to how many conversions do you get? And he said, well, I pretty much get every house I make an offer on. And they're like, well, how do you do that? He said, well, it's easy. I make sure I pick the exact house I want. I structure the conversation in person with them and I solve their problem. He said, I don't go and put all of my effort into trying to land in 1,000 people's mailboxes. I put my effort into one solid deal and I convert it. And he said, I just keep doing that. He said, some years I'll do 10, some years I'll do 50. He said, but I'm very hyper intentional about what the property looks like that I want to buy. We call that your buy box. And he said, I go in there and I figure out their problem. He said, it's all about the person. It's not about the marketing. It has nothing to do with the marketing. It's all about dialogue. And if you can get the dialogue right and you can truly be empathetic to that seller's needs, you can convert, but you can't take advantage of them. You have to be honest. You have to be very clear about the strategy you're going with. He said, you can structure it any way you want to and make it as, convoluted as you want to, but you got to be clear and transparent with that seller so that they don't feel, any type of question in their mind about where this transaction's going. And, a lot of people in that room were just awestruck because everything everyone tells us is, you got to have your mailing campaigns and you got to have your cold calling set up and you got to have all these strategies to get all these leads. And then maybe you'll convert a couple. He said, don't do that. He's been doing this for 40 years. And he said, I have over 500 houses and each one of them, I sat down with that seller and I talked to them. And that's how he has built his portfolio.
And I couldn't agree more. And not that I don't have marketing going out there to make the phone ring. And I do have an answering service that is collecting the original data. So there's some steps in place before I talk to the actual seller. But for me, I like that because number one, it's saving my time. Like my vision for my day is not to be taking 15 phone calls from tire kickers.
Right.
But the point is, once it's in my bucket, I can take that and have that exact same conversation that you just described using empathy. And truly, I don't ever mention what I need out of a deal. I know internally what I need. I'm always trying to solve their goals and their needs. To a degree, yesterday I had a lead, and this is a retail house and it's a waterfront property. So there's potential that it could be used as a short-term rental, but that's not the space I'm in. So as I'm talking with this woman, it comes out in the conversation, which of course is intentional on my side, that she has other rental properties, which led to her saying she has 22 doors. The majority of those are nowhere near where I live in Wisconsin. They're in St. Louis. And she says, yeah, I'm sure there's nothing you'd be interested there. I said, that's not true. I was in St. Louis last week. I have a lot of friends in St. Louis that are in the business. the whole conversation for 35 minutes went down this path of where buying your house retail, even on terms, probably is not a good fit for us. However, if we can work out a package deal, then I may, because she will really wants the 1031 exchange out of her St. Louis properties because now
Hmm.
she lives here in Wisconsin.
Gotcha.
So if I can help her through my connections in St. Louis get exactly what she wants, and I end up through that package getting this waterfront property at a better deal, that's beneficial for all of us.
Hmm.
But a mailer or cold call wouldn't have discovered that she had her personal property plus 22 more doors.
Right.
The conversation discovered it. You don't find creative deals, you make creative deals through conversations. I love the point that person made at that meeting because that's spot on.
It is. And yeah, I used to be a teacher, and I saw it in the classroom all the time. Kids would love to be on their cell phones, and they'd love to text and communicate that way. But when you got them in person, it's almost like they could not communicate. And, if you're a parent out there listening to this, or if you are one of those teenagers out there that are afraid to have in-person conversations, listen, it's not your fault. It's the fault of your parents, and it's the fault of us as the next generation for not taking you to places and putting you in situations where you are, forced to have in-person conversations. That's just a critical people skill that is diminishing greatly in our community and our society, of having real, genuine, empathetic conversations where we hear people. We don't just listen. There's a big difference. So talking to someone is different than having dialogue with someone. Talking with someone is you just spouting things off and they're not hearing you. So dialogue is when you are internalizing what they're saying and you're feeling it, and you're in your mind, you're trying to find ways to respond, to generate a response that is benefiting the conversation as a whole, instead of, I call them empty conversations. There's so many of those that happen. If we as a society could participate in dialogue more than communication or talking, we would be a much better country and nation and world if we could do that more.
Well, everybody just talks at each other, and they typically are now doing it through social media and things where anybody can make their point. If you don't like it, well, they can unfriend you or they can block you. And part of being able to say something without risk of getting punched in the nose is bad, right? Because yes, we should have freedom of speech. Everybody has a right to their opinion. They should be able to voice their opinion, but you also should be, as you said, empathetic and have the dialogue with somebody to be able to have a back and forth discussion / debate without just putting a point on your social media. And that's my hard stance. And I don't care what you believe in politics. This is what I believe and this is right. Or this is what I believe in health. And I don't care what you think. That's great. And that's a good way to end up lonely in the end. But
Right.
when we have a dialogue and we can compare, you and I, we met each other years ago, and we've got different upbringings, different backgrounds. We have a lot in common.
Right.
It's fantastic to sit and have a conversation with people. That's why I truly love, our masterminds, especially because we do it a little bit different. We all stay in a house together. I rent a big house, usually somewhere warm with a lot of amenities. And during our mastermind session, it's very intense, right? Everybody's got their time in what we call the hot seat. But the real magic happens at breakfast or sitting in the hot tub, having 1 or 2 adult beverages or playing poker. All these other things that happen in that 3, 4, 5 days that we're all immersed in each other's lives. And the other things that happen is the weird and awkward stuff, right? We're all living together. And initially, when you come into a group like that, you don't really know anybody. So there's this leap of faith. I'm going to go live in a house with 18 to 20 strangers. What's it going to be like, right? But the growth that comes from that and being vulnerable, I truly love, like when you and Tiffany were a part of Circle of Trust, seeing where you started and seeing where you were when you exited it just warms my heart. I truly am passionate about that type of growth and helping people with their visions for their lives and their businesses. So
Yeah, when Tiffany and I first started in the Circle of Trust, we had maybe 3 or 4 rental properties. We were running another company as well. We were just head buried into trying to grow something. And what we realized is we didn't really have a roadmap of where we were going. And we had a decent idea of the goals we wanted to chase, but we didn't have a full plan on how to get there. And that's what the community at the Circle of Trust provided us, was this sounding board of, hey, why are you doing that? And I'm like, well, I do it because I think I enjoy it. Well, do you really enjoy it? Well, I kind of enjoy it. And then it came down to, Eric, you hate it. You need to stop doing that. It's like, oh, I guess I do hate it. And, it's just one of those communities where you can get in. And the key to success in any type of professional networking environment is vulnerability and the space to be vulnerable. Because when you can do that, other people can truly see who you are and offer the best value. If you go and try to hop on into any type of mastermind, you don't need to hold back. You need to make sure it's a safe place. And that's where you vet, going into that environment. But when you get in there, you need to open up, let time build to gain trust. But if you want the maximum bang for your buck and you really want to change your life, you have to be vulnerable. You have to let out every detail that you can so that the people in that environment can help you shift and transform. And that's what we got through the circle of trust.
And I would add that the people that come in to any mastermind setting that are there to give more than they take, get even more than they expected. There's always that period of time where, again, you're nervous, you don't know what to expect. And for some people, it takes longer to break down those barriers than others. If your tendencies are to be more introverted, you might hold back a little bit. But when somebody's there and when you're in that setting, these people, you can see it in their eyes and their posture and their demeanor. When they're there to truly give, they often walk away with so much more. And I would also say, and this is not a plug for Circle Trust, this is just in general across masterminds. First of all, I want to define mastermind. If there's one person talking and everybody else listens and never gets input, that's not a mastermind, that's a seminar. A lot of people are using masterminds as a buzzword to sell seminars. But a true mastermind, in my opinion, and the way we run ours, is it's a peer-to-peer board of advisors to each other. And everybody has a voice. Everybody has the right to speak up. But what I do is a little different than some. We're not focused on helping you get to some goal that we think is right for you. We're helping you get to a goal that you believe is right for you. Mm-hmm. So I won't name specific masterminds, but there's a few of them out there they're just there. Like, you have to do a certain number of deals a year, or you have to have a certain net worth to even qualify to get into them. And their main focus is, we're going to take you from wherever you are now to the tip top of the universe in that space. Oftentimes, if that's not your vision for your life, somebody else is telling you, you should be doing 500 deals a year. You're doing 50 right now. We're going to take you to 500. Okay, fantastic. Except if that means you just lost your spouse and your kids because you got divorced and now you're absolutely lonely and you're taking pain meds and washing it down with bourbon, I would argue that wasn't a very good mastermind for you. You already said it. You need to vet where you're going to spend time and who you spend time with.
Absolutely. And there's so much that you can unpack with just the whole education space. One thing, like, this really big just pet peeve of mine is like vanity metrics and what people claim to be as good. Don't believe everything you see on the internet. We should know that by now. I think as a nation, as a society, we should know that.
Except, Eric, you should believe everything you hear on this show.
That's true. You should, because we're being vulnerable. But the vanity metrics of, like you said, going from 50 to 500 deals, what good is 500 deals if it came at the cost of your family and your sanity and your health, and now you die 25 years before you should have expired, right? These vanity metrics do not really gauge a sense of wealth. Wealth is far beyond financials, and wealth is really starts within you. It's at the core being of your existence. And if you are not wealthy with yourself, of I am full, I am complete, and that's just with yourself, not even your spouse or your children. But wealth is a scaffolding process where it starts with you. You are the cornerstone of your expanding wealth. That starts with A, being vulnerable with yourself, and then B, starting to do that with other people in a safe place where you can be challenged and guided and used as a board of directors. I've heard that in so many different places, that a mastermind or group coaching or somewhere along those lines, you do need a board of directors in your life. And it doesn't need to be the people you grew up with who are still living the same life they were then and they are now. Jim Rohn says that you are the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. And if you are still spending the most of your time with the 5 people you were 5 years ago, you are probably not experiencing growth. And you probably need to take them into your extended community and then replace them with 5 people that are living the life that you want to live. And be the dumbest kid in the class, be the brokest kid in the class, be the least amount of transactions in the class. You want to be the smallest fish in the biggest pond at all costs. Like, anywhere you go, that's where you want to be.
And to also build on that, I would argue that getting people from outside of your local area is even better because when we bring people together into a mastermind, I don't want people from the same community. And there was a point in time where even when you were in Circle of Trust, there was another person from your local area in the Circle of Trust. Even if you hold back 1% of what you would want to normally talk about because that other local person is in that group, that's bad. Like, right. I don't want anybody holding back anything, not even 1%. When you have people that are from completely different markets and completely different backgrounds, and when I say backgrounds, I mean age demographic, experience levels, everything you can imagine, that creates really great conversation and really great feedback in a vulnerable position, but nobody's competing against each other in any market condition. Mm-hmm. So when COVID hit, for example, people that were in Circle of Trust and other masterminds, because I also belong to masterminds, not just host my own. Most of us, 2020 was the best year in business we ever had because we could collaborate, and we were collaborating daily, especially early on when it first wasn't, lockdown. But we weren't panicking. We had something that the majority of the country didn't have, and that was a support system already put in place that we all trust each other 150%. Mm-hmm. If you go back to the beginning of our conversation in 2007, I lost everything and I said I was a closet investor. I didn't have a network. 2007 could have been so much different had I known enough to build a network prior to that. But I didn't know what I didn't know, and that's just life. Now there's ups and downs. Anybody that's listening to this, and you and myself, if we sit here and say it's always roses, we're lying to you. It's just not. Right. But when you've got the support system, man, you might think you owe the IRS $1 million, right? You might think the world is over. They're going to come and lock me up. And then you walk into a room of your peers and 2 or 3 other people in that room say, $1 million, shoot, that's nothing. I owe the IRS 10 million. Here's how I got out of it. Sit down. Let me help you. That's the reality. There are many people, and I would argue almost everybody that's an entrepreneur has gone through some tough times. And if they haven't yet, they will. It's
coming. It's coming.
So, hey, if you're listening to this and you haven't had any tough times, good luck to you.
Buckle your britches up.
Yeah.
But listen, those things that are coming for you, they're not going to happen to you. It's very important to keep the right frame of mind around the tough and challenging times. The things that are coming to you are not happening to you. They're happening for you. And the reason they're happening for you is so that in 5 or 10 years, when it happens again, you're well equipped. Or in a year or so, when you join a mastermind or a coaching program, or you start your own, you have a wealth of knowledge to now share to help other people in that same situation. Things never happen to you. The world is not out to get you. There's not some evil energy chasing you around, throwing all these tax bills at you or causing houses to fall apart. All of that usually stems from a lack of something on your part. And to avoid that, first, you got to get in the frame of mind that it's happening for you. And then second, you have to make sure you're being prepared to not make it happen again. And so that's one of those things that you get out of being in some type of group coaching, mastermind, or something of that nature is you get to bounce all these things off other people, and you get to have other people tell you, it's not that bad. You're going to make it. Here's how I've seen it done. Here's how I've done it. And it's just that support system to let you know you're not alone. Because entrepreneurs out there, usually we're the wealthiest people in our family. We are the wealthiest people in our local community, and we cannot share the things that we go through. It is a tough space to be in. And I can't go to my mom and say, hey, Ma, I got a $150,000 tax bill and I've only got half of it. What do you think I should do? She would not even fathom that. She gets like $12,000 a year from the federal government. She would not even know where to start. So it's a tough place to be an entrepreneur sometimes. And people are like, oh, must be nice to be wealthy. Listen, it's not easy. Is it nice? Sure, but it's not easy.
It's not easy. And the other side of what I consider generations of wealth, or the word wealth, it's not about money, it's about time. And I would say my wealthiest moments are the summer trips that we take with our family. Like the last 3 summers in a row, we've taken long 5 to 6 week trips. And some of those we've traveled to RV RIA and then traveled with some of the people that went to RV RIA across the country for 2 or 3 more weeks together. The whole point of wealth is, yes, money helps. There's no doubt anybody that says it doesn't help is lying to you, but it can also destroy your life if you're not careful.
Right.
And the time, you just don't get that back. I turned 48 years old in a couple weeks. And in 2003, I buried 3 of my classmates at 48 years old, 47 and 48 years old. When you are in this business long enough, and this is kind of the evolution, and anybody that's been in this business, let's just say the last 5 years, they could be panicking right now, right? They haven't seen interest rates like this. They haven't seen markets like this. But when you're in this long enough, you get in initially with these goals of having this big portfolio and the fancy cars and fancy vacations and the nice mansion or whatever, right? You want the stuff. After a while, the stuff gets old. It's just stuff, right?
Yeah.
The Ferrari, it's pretty cool the first couple months. Month 6, it's just the car.
Just another means of transportation.
Right. But after that, the legacy starts kicking in, going and helping others, teaching others. If I would have been successful and not lost everything in 2007, remember I said that was a blessing, nobody would want to come and attend my masterminds or attend the conference that we host or my trainings, because I would probably be an arrogant a-hole, right? I'd be like, oh, look how good I am. And I needed to get knocked down a peg or two. We all do. Stay humble. Realize, yes, we can build it up, but yes, it can be taken away. Many, many landlords that couldn't collect rents during COVID got destroyed they did absolutely nothing wrong, but they got destroyed. You never know. And that's where I look at it. The time you have today is here. Tomorrow's not promised. And
Absolutely.
The wealth to me is time, way more than money.
Yeah. I couldn't think of a better way to wrap up our show than that statement right there, because that is truly it. That's the one thing that we have not yet to figure out how to do is recreate time. And maybe one day, we'll go into a time warp machine and get back 20 years. Who knows? But I don't think that's in God's plan, and we shouldn't do that. But that's neither here nor there. Derek, I want to thank you so much for being on our show today and just spreading your just wealth of knowledge with our listeners. What is the best way for our listeners to get in touch with you if they have any interest in your Generations of Wealth cruise or your mastermind or anything else that you have to offer?
So the generationsofwealth.com is my platform. That's where you'll find my podcast, which is launching here right after the first of the year. And I will just flat out tell anybody on your show 2 things. Number 1, do you mind if I give them a couple of free gifts?
Absolutely.
Okay. So if you're watching this, you can see a couple books over my shoulders. If you're just listening, I was part of 2 books. You mentioned Jim Rohn earlier. Mm-hmm. Jim Rohn's business partner, Kyle Wilson, he was the man behind Jim Rohn. He invited me to be a part of these books in the last couple of years. And they're collaboration books with many awesome authors. The most recent book, which is called The Transformational Journey, Brian Tracy did the foreword for it. It's got such inspirational stories. And the other book is Next Level Your Life. Both of these, if your audience just sends me an email, I'll give you my direct email right to me. Just tell me, hey, I heard you on the On Purpose Investor show, like versions of the books. I want to make that clear. I'm not going to mail you physical copies. But just my first name, Derek, Derek, at globalgow.com is my direct email address. And, if there's something I can help you guys with, your listeners, don't hesitate to reach out, right? I can't promise I'm going to respond in 2 minutes, but I love creative deal structuring. I love helping people talk about vision. If you are interested in hearing more about the Circle of Trust and what we do in that mastermind, or the Generations of Wealth cruise that we host in March, so just go to the show notes. The websites will be there. But that's actually where I first met Eric, was on a cruise, not the one we host. You never know when you're going to meet the right people. And that's what we're passionate about. So reach out for anything. Your listeners are your family, and that makes it my family. So anything I can do to help.
Thank you, Derek. And thank you so much for your time this morning. I know you're a busy man, and I appreciate you taking time to come on our show and spread your wealth of knowledge. So y'all don't hesitate to reach out to Derek to get some free digital copies of those 2 best-selling books that you see behind him there. So thank you again for being on the show with us today. And I look forward to seeing you again soon, maybe in a new RV.
Absolutely. Thanks so much, Eric.
Thank you, Derek. We are immensely grateful for you joining us today. If you haven't already done so, we invite you to subscribe to our show. We understand that many of you tune in regularly, but perhaps haven't had the chance to hit that subscribe button yet. Don't worry, it's effortless. It takes about 3 seconds to follow or subscribe on your platforms like Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you're enjoying the show. Your support is invaluable to us and has played a crucial role in the tremendous growth of our podcast. We sincerely appreciate your assistance in any way, shape, or form. Together, we can launch this podcast to even greater heights.